professors, deans, and so on, they might have, a picture of Nelson Mandela, right? Because they took the picture, or they might have what you call trinket from Africa or from Asia to indicate that they have what you call understood diversity, equity, and exclusion, not inclusion. So they play that game, right? But in general, during the anti-apartheid movement, the same cluster of people, maybe just different individuals, their cousin right now is in the chancellor office, they are the ones that were arresting students using the same type of argument. It's complicated. They wanted us to have a dialogue. Literally, they brought South African blacks from the Chief Potolesi side to tour with the apartheid government. They offered some of the students a trip to go and see hand-picked area, right, in terms of these relations that were there. The U.S. government have constructive engagement policy of Reagan, which continue doing business as usual. So that was literally the landscape that we're dealing with at the time of the anti-apartheid movement. And the same arguments were being run that you don't know what you're talking about. This is not, it's a foreign issue. You need to focus locally, right? So all these arguments that we see today were being introduced at the time. What was critical also at the time, that every time the university was acting to try to get the student movement to try to bite, we actually consulted with the ANC. The ANC had a committee in New York, and literally we would check with them, is this something that would help the struggle for our black brothers and sisters in South Africa or not? If they said not, that's it. No matter what is your ego, no matter what plane ticket you have, no matter where it is, that does not serve the ANC. Now, one of the major campaigns was actually boycotting CocaCola. Right? CocaCola was in South Africa. CocaCola was vested to try to use South Africa as a bridge to penetrate the Africa market. Right? So the student population, the student councils actually voted on boycotting Coca-Cola. And you know how athletics is so wedded into Coca-Cola, the student centers, everything was going through this. And South Africa, again, the franchise was owned initially by a white company and a white person. So the Coca-Cola wanted to have a turnaround, so they actually brought in a black entrepreneur from South Africa to say that, look, we're actually helping our black South Africans in terms of market, and then later on shifted the franchise into one of those homelands. In this sense, that they were trying to appease and also pacify the movement in such a way by using all these tricks. What made it very critical at the time is that Pepsi began to actually send proposals to universities, say we're not in South Africa. All right? And they adopted the language of the students, the social responsibility language. And they say, Alhamdulillah, so, if a major company like Pepsi is becoming your advertiser, you take it, right, and you run with it. So in this sense, Pepsi became one of our biggest, what you call, advocates for their own interests. Again, let them fight at each other while we actually push forth with our struggle. So we have to look at these opportunities of how to actually engage, both in relations to the struggle for Palestine, but also along history. I wanted to speak a little bit on the birth or the arrival of SJP into the scene. Right? So the Students for Justice in Palestine, the first chapter was formed at UC Berkeley, and I credit my colleague at the time, Osama Al-Qasim, who was a graduate student with us at Berkeley. And we're a group of students that were literally the end of apartheid, South Africa. It was also the end of the U.S. invasion of Iraq, which we need to remember, right? All these people that forgot that we killed about, not we, I'm sorry, but we killed about 1.5 million Iraqis, nameless, faceless, nobody had a memorial for them. The Abu Ghraib torture chambers later on, post-2000. So that was also the period of that, the birth of SJP. The Central American Solidarity Movement in the work of El Salvador, the FMLN, the U.S. mining and mining the ports of Nicaragua. So all this was also a success that we were looking at. And also for those during the early 90s, we had the Rodney King. If you think about the Ferguson and you think about George Floyd, it's the same circumstances, the beating of Rodney King at the time. These were all events that took place, and people had encampment. Right? San Francisco, we had Little Baghdad right there at the plaza. It lasted close to 3 months, right, with the same type of intense campaign, bringing all these issues together. So from the get-go of how to actually deal with organizing for Palestine, one of the impacts of the U.S. invasion of Iraq at the time is that Palestinians were not able to come to the United States financially, because many of the Palestinians who worked in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia in the Gulf were actually thrown out because Yasser Arafat at the time did not take the U.S. position. So all of a sudden, students who were being sent by their families to study in the U.S. or have some type of scholarships, it dried out. And overnight, we had no Palestinians coming in to again continue to renew the vigor, the organizing. So we had to figure out how to organize with a broad-based coalition. So if you wanted to organize for Palestine, Students for Justice in Palestine was an avenue for you. So it benefited from the Central American Solidarity Movement, the South African, the anti-US intervention in Iraq, the police brutality and violence that was also, so that's how the coalescing took place on campus. And long and behold, after 1993, where SJP is formed in Berkeley, you get the Oslo Agreement. Now, between 1993 and I was saying 98, even within Palestinian circles, you could not organize for Palestine, because everybody thought this peace process, people were thinking about having joint projects, so much so that even in San Francisco, people were inviting each other to see how we could have investment opportunity. And literally, kid you not, there was actually a gathering to see if we could open fisheries around Jericho. Fisheries, again, and this was bringing people to think about investment and opportunity. So if you're speaking against or critiquing Oslo, you're basically you're critiquing apple pie and ice cream, including among the Palestinians, because a larger segment of them did not want to confront what is taking place at this point. And literally, if the PLO have signed the peace treaty, there's already dialogues taking place, investment opportunity. I wrote actually an article immediately after Oslo, literally came out in Decolonized magazine, 1993, literally 2 months after. Until today, if you read the article, it is exactly to the minutest detail. I said that the Palestinian Authority to be created will be a police force that will actually shift the responsibility of securing the colonizer from the colonized population, and in essence become the police force. And on top of this, the United States and the Western world will recolonize the Middle East. And today we think 57 Muslim majority states and Arab states, not a single one of them is able to send a bottle of water. Why? Because we're dealing the recolonization in the post-colonial. Right? That's how these are post-colonial states that re-emerged in a colonial structure, and much of their security, much of their enterprise, economic projects are connected to the United States. So SJP was a response to the period, but also creatively to try to organize in a broad-based coalition. By the 2003 and post-second U.S. invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, campuses across the country actually began to take the model of SJP. One critical issue, why SJP was not centralized, and this was one of my main arguments, because historically Palestinian organizing always faced provocateurs and infiltration. And this infiltration always derailed our agenda. In essence, once we have, again, we could go back to Palestine Solidarity Committee, we could talk about the American Friends Service Committee. There's always been this infiltration, derailing the agenda, and making it almost impossible for us to do the needed work. And you end up in all kinds of territorial items, discussions, and debate that basically, if you're a debating team, it might be enjoyable, but as far as a political movement, it reaches a dead end. So from the get-go, I actually insisted that it should be decentralized. You just take the principles and adhere to the principle, and then be as creative as you can, developing your SJP in the context that you are. And that's, in essence, not only, I would say, infiltration, but also some various groups want to jump on the Palestine cause for their own purposes. So that's also a phenomenon, not both allies and not allies, but our worry was about Zionist infiltration that was paramount. So from this, you get different campuses beginning to pick SJP as an idea, right? And begin to organize around it. So far, right now, you have close to 300 campuses with SJP. Each are independent. Now, I say this because I don't know if you saw the hearing in Congress. We already have a number of lawsuits that are filed to say that there is some masterminds behind the SJP. I went to try to get one of these Harry Potter wands. Just every time I used it, didn't work. But literally, the attempt is to try to use the anti-terrorism law, and this is very important what is being done. The anti-terrorism law says that either you engage in some form of material support, financial, or you actually are propagating knowingly the propaganda or the messages of a designated terrorist organization. So in essence, what they are trying to use is the anti-terrorism legislation that came through the Patriot Act in order to designate, in particular, national SJP as an arm or as promoting terrorism. And if that happens, then to be able to shut down SJP as an organization. They also have given the designation to the Treasury Department through another legislation to be able for the Treasury Department to shut down nonprofit organizations. So that's the game that pro-Israel, the ADL, AJC, and others are playing with AIPAC, really mobilizing their efforts to try to shut down the political movement from top to bottom. So we need to be aware of it, not to be scared, but to be aware, to understand that this is the game of power, right? Because we have reached a tipping point. The tipping point, and I thank, what's her name, President Shafiq, right? Manouche Shafiq from Colombia, right? And I said that she went to Congress. It's not every day that you get a chancellor or a president go to testify in Congress. Camera, you know, you got your PR person saying they're gonna, and she did a great job. She threw the faculty under the bus, she threw the students under the bus, right? Everybody on campus under the bus, and she thought that she made it. I thought, you know, after her performance, she would be given a secretary of something, you know. I know the Department of Nothingness is always available. So literally from her paradigm, she came back to Colombia to crack heads, right, to call the New York Police Department to do what she thought was the performative politics, responding to a McCarthyist type of style. And all indication that was positive. In less than 48 hours, 80 campuses responded within campus. As they say, God works in mysterious ways. And as of today, there's 180 campuses around the country. And not only that, but you need to know that already we are registering victories on campuses. University of Milwaukee, they actually have negotiated, they're going to completely divest. University of Milwaukee. Evergreen College completely divested. Brown University already is going to put a ballot for students and everybody to vote on divestment. Bernard College, they had a student vote. 91% of the students voted for divestment. Stanford University, I know they're a different class level, right? Stanford University, undergraduate voted 72% for divestment, the graduate 74% for divestment. Sacramento State University, likewise, they reached an agreement, right, where the university committed itself to complete divestment, right? This is up the street. So we're already in a short period of time are registering major victories, but it's also a cumulative work. So the moment is a result of a cumulative work going almost 30 years. And I do believe that we will see a free Palestine in our time. When the story is written, this tipping point in the U.S. universities will be written as an indication of the change that we have witnessed. And people in Gaza are actually aware and talking about and inspired by what is taking place on college campuses. People in Nablus, I'm from Nablus, so I know that people in Nablus are following what is taking place. So they are inspired and they actually are depending on you to actually make the shift and the needed change in here. Because we still are the people that are providing the bombs that are being thrown at the Palestinians, that are providing international protection. And I don't want to even begin with the complicity of the media, right? Complicity of the media is just unbelievable. But we shouldn't expect anything from, powdered faces on TV. Right? They never go beyond this. We know what they do to our black brothers and sisters. Every time that a police shoots a black person, the black person becomes the subject and becomes the guilty, as if they went there to try to ask for the bullet in their back, right? So that's the same dynamics on the international level. And we always have to make these connections simultaneously. Never actually disconnect the international from the local. The local is transnational, transnational is local, because the vested interests are one and the same. Thank you.